They left her to die in the desert, bound, blindfolded, and barefoot under the brutal Mojave sun. But what they didn't know was this: she wouldn't just survive, she'd rise. And by the time they came back for her, they weren't facing a girl anymore, they were facing a storm. Stick around, because this story, it doesn't end how you think it does. July in Joshua Tree wasn't a place, it was a test. The kind of heat that made the air shimmer and the ground hiss. Nothing bloomed in that sun, not unless it had thorns. The land had no sympathy for the weak, and that day neither did the sky. It was the kind of day that made you wonder why God ever bothered with desserts. Samuel Reeves stood with a cracked mug of black coffee staring across the dust-blown plain that bordered his rancho. At 45, he'd seen more of this life than he cared to remember. The kind of man who didn't speak unless words mattered. He didn't smile unless it counted. He was built like the barns folks stopped repairing after the war, worn, solid, and stubbornly standing. He thought it was just another heat mirage at first, something the sun dreamed up to break a man's mind. But the shape didn't shimmer. It didn't disappear. It stood there, still, unmoving, unnatural. She was there. A girl, or maybe a woman, young but worn, just outside the broken fence line where the weeds had long taken over. The hem of her dress clung to her legs like it had given up. Her hair, if she had any, was hidden beneath a rough burlap sack tied tight over her head. No holes to see through. No kindness in the knot. Her hands hung at her sides, rope cutting deep into the flesh of her wrists. And she didn't make a sound. No screaming, no begging. Not even a whimper, just silence. The kind of silence that crawls inside you and stays there. Sam didn't move for a long while. He knew the desert played tricks. He'd buried enough ghosts in these sands to know that. But this wasn't no ghost. This was real, too real, and real things hurt worse than anything dead. He walked slow like a man headed toward something he couldn't unsee. The wind kicked up dust slicing across his skin. Each step he took, he swore he could hear the dry grass whispering warnings he couldn't make out. She didn't flinch when he reached her. Didn't recoil or brace. She just stood like the world had already taken everything and left her with nothing to protect. Her breath was shallow, almost unsure if she still needed to bother breathing at all. His hands, calloused and dark from sun and soot, reached for the knot at the back of her head. It was tied with rage. It wasn't about covering her, it was about erasing her. He had to work the fibers loose with the care of a man defusing a bomb. 3 minutes. That's how long it took. 3 minutes of breathing in heat and dust, and the scent of fear baked into burlap. When the sack finally came off, it revealed a face both too young and too aged. Her skin was sun-kissed to the point of burn, lips cracked, eyes red from whatever she'd endured or survived. She still didn't cry, just blinked. Once, and said, "If you're gonna leave me too, just say it now." It wasn't a plea, it wasn't even a question, it was a resignation. Sam felt something in his gut twist. He didn't believe in signs, but something about her words hit like scripture, like fate had walked her up to his gate and dared him to turn away. He didn't speak, just offered a hand. She looked at it like it was a knife, then took it like it was the last thing she'd ever be allowed to hold. Her legs gave as she stepped forward, and he caught her without ceremony. She was light, scary light, like she hadn't eaten in days, or weeks. He lifted her onto his old horse the same way he'd once lifted his little sister before the fever took her. Gently, respectfully, without a single wasted word. The ride back to the cabin was quiet, but not empty. It was the kind of silence that fills the air when two souls recognize something familiar in each other. Not love, not even trust. Just an unspoken truth we've both seen too much. At the house, he helped her down and into the cool shade, gave her water. She drank like it hurt to swallow, but didn't waste a drop. He boiled a potato and handed her the bigger half. She didn't thank him, didn't need to. He offered her a seat by the window, and she wrapped herself in an old wool blanket that still smelled of tobacco and pine. For 20 minutes, neither of them said a thing. He didn't press. Pressing breaks people. And she looked like someone who'd already been broken more times than a body should allow. Then she spoke. They said, "I bring curses." Her voice was hoarse. Fragile, like every word she gave cost her something. Sam looked straight ahead. That ain't a curse. That's cowardice talking. A silence followed. But it was different now. Warmer somehow. Like something had shifted in the room that neither of them was brave enough to name. And then she smiled. Just a little, crooked and faint. But it was something. Outside, the desert didn't care. The wind still howled. The heat still baked the earth. But inside that cabin, something had cracked open. Not a door, not a heart. Maybe just a chance. And for the first time in years, Sam Reeves wasn't alone in his house. And she wasn't dying in the dirt. She was waiting for what came next. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but he knew this: whatever happened before she came to his fence, it ended there. Because that's what men like Sam Reeves did when no one else would. They stopped the bleeding and gave silence a place to rest. The desert didn't whisper that morning. It kept its breath held like it was waiting to see what Samuel Reeves would do next. Inside the weather-worn walls of his rancho, the air was cooler but not kinder. Shadows clung to corners where sunlight dared not go. The girl sat there wrapped in a blanket, older than she was, like something you'd try to fix but didn't know how. She hadn't spoken since they got back. Not a question. Not a single thank you. But Sam didn't expect her to. He'd brought home silence before. The kind that settled in after gunfire or grief, the kind you couldn't sweep out with a broom. She was that silence now. Breathing, blinking, staring through the broken window like maybe she saw a world he couldn't. He gave her space. Some wounds don't close better with company. He'd learned that the hard way. But on the third day something changed. It was subtle. She folded the blanket instead of leaving it in a crumpled heap. She drank her water before it got warm. She sat straighter, though her hands still trembled when they reached for the tin cup. Sam noticed, but he didn't say a word. He just kept splitting wood and mending fence posts that hadn't mattered for years. The chores didn't need doing, but they gave him something to do with his hands. One night, just as the sun bled itself dry over the hills, he heard something. A hum, low and steady, like wind through cracked wood. It was her. She was humming not for him, not for anyone, just for the sake of remembering how sound worked. The tune had no name. Maybe it was a lullaby. Maybe it was a prayer. She didn't stop when he stepped inside. Didn't look embarrassed. Just finished her tune and looked at him with eyes that had stopped trying to hide. Lena, she said, that was all. No last name, no story. Just a name handed over like a fragile heirloom. Sam gave a small nod and poured 2 tin cups of water. One for her, one for the silence. The nights got longer after that. Not in time, just in weight. She would stare into the fire like it might spell answers in its crackling tongues. Sam sometimes caught her tracing patterns in the dust on the table. Circles, lines, dots. He realized one night they matched the stars outside. She was drawing constellations maps to somewhere she might have once belonged. On the 7th day, the roof groaned with wind and the shutters banged loose like old bones. Sam offered her the smaller bedroom, a space he used to keep tools. She moved without hesitation, carrying the blanket with her, like it was the only piece of armor she had. That night, thunder cracked miles away, and she flinched. Not once, twice. Sam heard her get up and walk outside barefoot. He followed slow and quiet. She was standing under the sky arms, folded eyes pointed toward Orion. They said I'd never make it past the border, she said. Her voice was stronger now, not full, but no longer empty. They said people like me don't last. Sam leaned against the post and looked at the stars, too. People like you. She glanced at him, the forgotten ones. Sam sighed through his nose. Funny. Seems to me people like you are the only ones who do last. The rest just pretend they're strong. There was a pause, and then a sound he hadn't expected. A laugh, soft, raspy, but real. She didn't explain it. Didn't need to. Next morning, Sam found her sweeping the porch. Not well, but determined. She'd tied her hair back with an old strip of flannel. Her sleeves rolled to her elbows, revealing bruises in the shape of old fingers. He didn't ask, didn't need to know. She cooked a small breakfast, burnt eggs and half-raw beans, but it was something. They ate in silence. Not the heavy kind, but the kind that knows not every word needs saying. By midday, she'd found a patch of ground that still held moisture from a leaking pipe. Planted something. Sam didn't ask what, didn't want to break the spell. That evening, she stood in the doorway watching the sunset and holding a fork she didn't need. If I stay, she said, do I become a ghost too? Sam looked at her more serious than a preacher in the rain. No, he said. You become the reason this place ain't haunted anymore. She didn't respond, but she didn't look away either. Later that night, he watched her draw a map in the dirt behind the barn. Not of roads or rivers, but of memories. She placed a rock where her father had fallen. A twig for the sister taken too soon. A burned match for the man who tried to own her. She didn't cry, but her hands, those small, cracked hands, moved like she was laying them to rest. Sam didn't disturb her. He just stood there hidden in the shadows watching a girl rebuild something no one had ever taught her how to fix. And in that quiet where only the stars bore witness, he whispered something not meant for her ears. You're not alone anymore. He meant it. Whether she believed it yet didn't matter. Because echoes don't just fade. Sometimes they build, layer by layer, until a voice is strong enough to speak again. And Lena, well, she wasn't echoing anymore. She was becoming a voice. The wind that afternoon felt different. Not angry, not loud, just too still, like the world was holding its breath for something it didn't want to see. Sam Reeves felt it in his bones the way old men feel the rain coming. A kind of warning without words. He looked out from his porch and saw the dust first, just a faint cloud on the horizon, but it wasn't the kind kicked up by wild mustangs or wandering deer. This dust moved with purpose. 3 riders. They crested the low ridge like shadows pulled out of the earth. Not fast, not loud, but straight, dead on toward the Rancho. Lena was inside stitching a patch into one of Sam's old shirts with a needle too dull for the job. Her fingers had stopped shaking days ago, but something in the air made her pause. She looked toward the window without standing. As if some part of her remembered this feeling like an old scar burning before a storm. Sam stepped down from the porch, slowly, not bothering with his hat. His shotgun was still up on the rack inside. He didn't grab it. Not yet. He wanted to see what kind of men these were. The desert didn't make folks polite anymore, but it sure taught them to announce their intentions one way or another. The first rider was tall, thin, and too clean for someone riding this deep into nothing. His boots were polished, his collar stiff, and his eyes didn't blink enough. The second had a crooked nose and a toothpick clenched in his teeth like he'd been born with it. The third, silent, broad-shouldered, head lowered, rode like his horse carried something heavier than saddlebags. They didn't dismount. "You, Samuel Reeves," the tall one asked. Sam nodded. "We're looking for a girl," he continued. "Name's Lena. Red hair, pretty. Walks with a little limp." Inside, Lena didn't move, didn't breathe. Just pressed her hands flat on the table until her knuckles turned white. Sam didn't blink. "Ain't seen her." The man smiled. But it wasn't a friendly one. She was with someone. Said she escaped from Blythe, left a mess behind. Couple fellas got hurt, one still missing teeth. Sam stared face calm as ever. Sounds like trouble came looking to get its face rearranged. The second rider chuckled, but the tall one didn't flinch. "She's not yours to keep. She was paid for. Promised." Now that word promised hung in the air like a noose. Sam stepped forward, boots crunching dry earth. "She ain't property. She ain't payment. She's a person. You want cattle, go rustle somewhere else." The third man finally looked up. A scar ran from his ear to his neck like someone had once tried to silence him and failed. His eyes landed on the house. "Why'd she run?" he asked, voice like gravel soaked in whiskey. Sam didn't answer, because it wasn't his question to answer. The tall man tipped his hat. "We'll be back." Sam nodded once. "Then I'll be ready." They turned their horses slow, deliberate. No panic, no threats. That's how he knew they weren't bluffing. These were men used to getting what they wanted, and they didn't like being told no. Inside, Lena stood by the window now. Her face pale, her mouth a hard line. "They'll come again," she said. "I know," Sam replied. That night she didn't sleep. Neither did he. He sat on the porch, cleaning the shotgun he didn't reach for earlier. She sat at the table, feather in hand, tracing patterns in the grain of the wood like it held answers. "Why'd you lie for me?" she asked finally. Sam looked up. "Because I've seen men like that before. And I've seen what happens when folks look away. You don't even know what I did, don't need to." She looked down. "One of them. He was the one who tied the sack over my head. Told me I was just something to trade." Sam's jaw clenched. But he didn't speak. He said I'd bring ruin, that any man who kept me would lose everything. Sam leaned forward. They always say that about things they can't control. For the first time in weeks her eyes filled, but she didn't cry, just nodded, just once. Morning came cold. Unusual for July. The kind of cold that makes a man remember the warmth he's taken for granted. Sam saddled the old horse and rode the perimeter, checking the fence line, stopping every few feet to test the posts. It was habit more than need, a way to think. When he returned, Lena was in the yard, not hiding, not inside. She wore a scarf over her hair and carried a pot of boiling water out to the edge of the porch. Washed his boots. Just like that. Quiet, steady. Sam didn't ask why. He just sat beside her after both of them watching the road. Waiting. Because once you've been hunted, you stop hoping they won't come. You start preparing for when they do. The morning after the riders left, the air felt changed. Not safer, not yet, but changed. It had the scent of wood ash and something softer, like old rain, just beneath the dust. The kind of morning that made an old man sit still a little longer before standing. Sam Reeves woke with that feeling in his chest, like something had shifted beneath the surface, even if the sky looked the same. Lena was already up sitting by the window with her knees pulled close, watching the road like it might grow fangs. She didn't say much that day, and neither did Sam. Some conversations don't need words. They just need time and silence, like a field left to heal before the seeds go back in. Later that afternoon, they heard the sound of wheels on rock. A wagon was approaching slow and heavy. Sam reached for the shotgun instinctively, but when he stepped out, he saw the shape of a woman older than Lena, eyes hollow but alert, guiding the mule. In her arms, a child slept, wrapped in a thin sheet and red from sun exposure. The woman's dress was torn shoes, broken at the seams. She didn't ask permission. She didn't knock. She just stepped down from the wagon, looked Lena in the eyes, and whispered, "You saved me once. Back in Texas, before they split us." Lena didn't cry. She stepped forward, took the child gently, and said, "Then it's my turn." That's how the house started to fill again. Not with noise, not with people shouting or laughing, but with quiet movement. With things being swept, cleaned, mended. With bread being made clumsy at first, and blankets being stitched with mismatched threads. Maybelle, the woman, moved slowly but worked like she was building something sacred. She taught the child to hum little tunes while picking nails out of the dirt behind the barn. Lena began planting herbs near the cottonwood tree using a spoon as her shovel. Sam watched it all without interrupting. He only stepped in when a hinge needed fixing, or a beam sagged under new weight. The Rancho, once a shell of what it had been, was changing. Not all at once, but like an old wound healing from the inside out. One evening, as the sun dipped low and stretched the shadows long, Lena sat near the fire, plucking old strings on a guitar with 3 missing frets. The music barely held shape, but it stirred something in the air. Sam sat on the steps listening like it was a sermon. "This place feels different now," she said softly. Sam nodded. That's what happens when people stop running. She looked at him for a long time. "I didn't think I'd ever stop." "You didn't have to," he said. "You just had to choose." That night a storm rolled in from the west. No lightning, no thunder, just steady weeping rain. It soaked into the ground like the earth was remembering how to drink. Lena stepped into it, barefoot arms open like she was testing whether she could still feel things. She didn't smile, but she didn't cry either. Maybelle brought out the quilts to dry after, and the child, small, quiet, still afraid of loud noises, began drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick. Houses, trees, people holding hands. Sam knelt beside her once and said, "That you?" She nodded. "That's me. That's Mama. That's Miss Lena. That's you." He chuckled low. "I never had such long legs." Word got out slowly. First through a trader passing by, who noticed smoke from the chimney. Then a neighbor curious if the old rancho was occupied again. Then others. And strangely, the whispers weren't cruel. Some folks brought food, some dropped off tools. Some came with eyes full of questions, but mouths that chose kindness instead. No one asked Lena what happened, and when children came to play near the fence, no one warned them away. Lena began keeping a journal. Just scribbles at first, but each page filled with notes about the garden memories of her sister the first night she slept without nightmares. She placed a small tin above the fireplace and called it the quiet box. If anyone needed to say something they couldn't voice, they wrote it down and dropped it in. Sam read from the box one night. "I thought I was gone, but maybe I just hadn't been found yet. No name, no date. But it hit like thunder. By spring, the house had become more than a home. It was a resting place, a second beginning. People came not because they were invited, but because they needed to believe it was possible to still be safe somewhere. Lena, who once wouldn't speak now, taught the child to read. She sang while she swept. She kept a feather on the windowsill, always facing east. Sam fixed the barn roof with nails the child had sorted by size. Maybelle hung new curtains, old sheets, cut to fit, but they danced in the breeze like silk. One afternoon Lena took the sack, the very one that once covered her head, and walked it to the fence. She didn't burn it. She didn't bury it. She hung it gently from a wooden post and let the wind pull at its threads. "I want it to go with the wind," she said. "But not like I'm still running, like I'm finally letting it leave." Sam watched her arms crossed, then let it. She turned to him. Do you think I'm still broken?" He shook his head. "No, I think you were never meant to bend in the first place." That night they sat beneath the stars. The fire crackled low. The child lay curled in Maybelle's lap, breathing soft. Lena stared up at the constellations. "Every fire I've known destroyed something," she said. "But this one made room." Sam didn't say anything, but in his silence he agreed, and the wind for once didn't feel like it was trying to carry someone away. It just felt like home. It began with silence, not the kind that comes when people sleep or when the fire dies low. No, this was the silence before a storm, the kind that tightens your chest and makes birds fly crooked. Lena stood at the edge of the pasture, the early sun behind her casting a long shadow toward the fence where the sack hung. That piece of burlap, once soaked in sweat and silence, fluttered gently in the breeze, like it no longer remembered what it had done. She stared at it, arms folded, eyes steady. The wind tried to move her hair, her clothes, her thoughts, but she didn't flinch. Behind her, the Rancho was quiet. Maybelle and the child were still asleep. Sam sat on the porch, cup of coffee in his hand, though it had long gone cold. He watched her through the morning light, wondering how something so broken had learned to stand so straight. Then they came. No dust, no warning. Just 4 riders emerging over the ridge like they'd grown from the rock itself. The same man who'd come before was among them, Clayton Briggs, thin and sunburnt with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Word around the border town said he sold people like livestock, that he carved numbers into their ribs and counted them like coins. Sam had never needed confirmation. The look in Lena's eyes when she'd first heard his name was proof enough. Sam stood and stepped down from the porch. He didn't grab his shotgun. Not yet. There was still a chance this could end with words. Briggs stopped 10 paces from the fence. "She's ours," he said. "You don't get to keep what was paid for." Sam's voice was calm. "I ain't keeping her. She ain't a thing." Briggs spit into the dirt. "You think that girl don't carry curses? I've seen men fall apart just for touching her." Lena turned around. She wasn't hiding in the house. She wasn't behind Sam. She walked forward until the sack was behind her, fluttering in the wind. "You beat me," she said. "You branded me with your lies. You left me in a place so empty even the sun felt cruel." Briggs stiffened. The others exchanged glances. "You told me I'd never be more than what you paid for. That kindness was weakness. That silence would protect me. You were wrong." Sam stepped closer. "You should ride out now." Briggs narrowed his eyes. "She belongs to the man who bought her. She belongs to no one." Sam set his voice low, but his stance rooted like the cottonwood. The third rider, silent until now, shifted in his saddle. His eyes met Lena's, something flickered there. Recognition. Shame. "She saved my sister," he said, barely above a whisper. Briggs turned sharply. "What in Blythe? She helped her escape." Briggs barked, "You shut your mouth." But it was too late. The tension cracked. One rider turned his horse and left without a word. The others hesitated. Sam stepped forward now. Shotgun in hand, barrel pointed toward the dirt. "You come here again," he said, "and I'll bury what's left of you beneath that ridge." Briggs looked around, saw the shift in his own men's eyes, saw the fear, saw the end. He didn't say another word, just turned and rode away. The others followed. When the dust settled, Lena stood still. Her hands weren't shaking. Her breath didn't hitch. She turned back to the sack and reached for it. Sam stepped beside her. "You sure?" She nodded. "I've carried it long enough." She untied it from the post, walked it out to the middle of the pasture and released it. The wind took it fast, swirling it like a ghost, trying to find its final resting place. She didn't watch it disappear. She just turned back and walked home. That night, the porch was full. Maybelle sat with her sewing. The child drew stars on the floorboards with chalk. Sam rocked a slow pipe unlit in his mouth. Lena sat with a journal in her lap, but she wasn't writing. "Do you think it'll ever come back?" she asked. Sam didn't have to ask what it meant. "No," he said. "Some things get burned clean." She looked out into the night. "It never really was about escaping, was it?" He shook his head. "It was about choosing where to plant your feet." Lena smiled. Just a little. Then reached into her pocket and pulled out the feather she'd kept since the day she arrived. She held it up to the firelight. "I thought this meant freedom," she said, "but I think it just meant direction." She gave it to the child who placed it beside her chalk stars. And that was the end of it. Not a gunfight, not a speech. Just the quiet settling of a storm that had taken years to pass. By morning, the Rancho smelled of bread and wet grass. Someone was singing off-key but brave. The sack was gone. The past had its place. And Lena, she wasn't running anymore. She was growing. Some stories don't need fireworks to end. They don't need a dramatic fall or a grand parade. Some stories end the way a storm passes quietly without asking permission. Lena's story wasn't about escaping danger. It was about surviving it, confronting it, and eventually outgrowing it. It began with silence and fear, with a girl left to die in the desert. And it ended with her standing tall, watching the wind carry away the last symbol of her pain. Lena's journey from brokenness to quiet strength is the kind of story that stays in your bones. She was once a girl who flinched at every cough, who wrapped herself in stillness to avoid being noticed. She was bound, silenced, treated as if she were less than human. But she chose not to stay there. She didn't wait for permission to heal. She just began to live again, one careful step at a time. What Lena showed us was not just courage, it was endurance. She didn't roar. She didn't fight with fists or shout for justice. She stood her ground. She planted flowers. She sang again, even if her voice cracked. She carried others even when she was still learning to carry herself. In a world that told her she was cursed, Lena became a blessing. She made a broken place whole again. She turned a forgotten house into a haven. She helped a child draw stars. She showed a woman named Maybelle that safety could return. And she gave Sam Reeves, a man who thought his story was over, a reason to keep getting up each day. Sam had once been hardened by life. A man who'd seen too much, lost too much. He didn't ask for Lena, but when she appeared, he didn't turn away. And that choice, the choice to care when it's easier not to, that's what built everything that followed. He didn't rescue her, he stood beside her. And sometimes that's more powerful than anything else. The lesson here isn't just about survival. It's about rebirth. It's about finding peace not by erasing the past, but by outgrowing it. Lena didn't forget what happened to her. She remembered, but she refused to be defined by it. Instead, she grew gardens over old wounds. She turned scars into maps. She turned silence into a song. And that's where the truth lies for us. Because we all carry something. Maybe not a burlap sack or rope burns, but hurt just the same. We carry words that cut memories that won't let go, moments we don't speak about. And some of us, many of us, think we have to keep running from them. But Lena showed us there's another way. You can stop. You can sit still. You can let yourself belong again. Not because it's easy, not because you forget, but because choosing to grow is louder than anything the past can scream. So, what do we take from this story, those of us watching or listening from a world far from Joshua Tree? We take this. No matter what's behind you, you're still allowed to become something beautiful. You're still allowed to plant your feet and build a life. You don't need to prove your worth. You already have it. And maybe, just maybe the strongest thing you'll ever do is refuse to be ashamed of your story. Let Lena be a reminder that healing is not about perfection. It's about motion, about choosing to put your hands in the dirt even if they still shake, about letting the wind carry away what no longer belongs to you. Even when the world feels like it's watching, even when it whispers that you're too far gone, you can choose to take one more step forward. You can create stillness inside chaos. You can find dignity in the smallest moments, sharing bread, braiding a child's hair, repairing an old fence with your bare hands. You can decide without anyone's permission that you matter, just like Lena did. Her story isn't finished because the truth is, it never really was hers alone. Her story lives in the quiet resilience of everyone who's been told they were too broken to stay, in the hands of anyone who's ever offered help without asking for history. It's in the eyes of every soul who's ever stood up even on shaking legs and said, "I'm not done yet." That's the legacy Lena leaves behind, not in headlines or history books, but in soft steps that leave strong imprints, in gardens planted where fire once burned, in the simple stubborn act of staying. And now, dear friend, the story passes to you. What will you do with it? Will you carry it forward? Will you remember her name when someone else says they're tired of running? Will you tell them there's a place to rest, a place to begin again? If this story moved you, if Lena's quiet strength reminded you of your own or someone you love, then please support our journey by subscribing to the channel. Your voice matters here. Your presence gives us the fuel to keep telling stories that speak to the heart. Stories that say, you matter. You're not forgotten. You are more than your scars. Subscribe now and let's walk into the next story together.